Welcome to the Experience Gap, the insight shop to the rescue, where we turn customer nightmares into teachable moments for businesses. Each week, we bring you real stories of service breakdowns, highlight the moments that matter, and equip businesses with strategies to delight their customers. I'm Kate Complin, the owner of the Insight Shop. I created this podcast to give customers a voice, to share their stories and frustrations, in hopes that companies would take notice, listen, and take action, as customers are your most important asset. Joining me today is Korrie Johnson, my sister. Korrie, it's great to have you on my podcast.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
So, Korrie, tell the audience about your recent experience traveling on West Jet Airlines. What fell short, what happened, and how did it impact you? And as you're sharing your story, tell the audience the moments that really were important to go right and what some of the major problems were across your experience.
Okay. Well, first off, I was hesitant about sharing my experience at all because I really didn't want to relive it. We had been on a trip. We had gone to all the national parks in Canada. We went to Calgary, had a fabulous trip. And then the flight home with WestJet is where everything went wrong. So a very sad way to end a nice trip. What happened is we arrived at the airport 2 hours before our flight time. That's pretty common for us. And honestly, we've never had issues with that in the past. Sometimes cutting it a little bit close, but never had any issues. So what happened is we got into the airport and we saw the WestJet check-in right away because we had a bag to check. And it was a pretty long line. There was probably maybe 50 people in front of us. We stood in that line and watching the clock go down as it was getting closer and closer to our flight. Nearly 40 minutes had passed when an agent came and said, "Is anyone in this line traveling internationally?" And we're like, "Yeah, we are." She said, "Well, I'm sorry, but you have to go to the other end of the airport." And we were like, "What?" Like, we'd been standing in that line a long time. So we went to the other end of the airport, which was a hall, probably took us 5 minutes just to get down there with our stuff. And we look at that line, and I am not joking, well over 100 people in the line. Now, by this time, it was a little over an hour before our flight was going to depart. And I looked at that line, and I'm like, I think it's going to take a good hour just to get through that line. Like, we're going to miss our flight. So I asked to talk to a customer service manager. And she looked at the clock and she's like, "Your flight is in an hour. We can't do anything for you." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "It's our policy. All bags need to be checked 1 hour before flight departure." So number one, really upsetting because that was never indicated in any emails. Had we known our bag needed to be checked a full hour before, there is no way we would have gotten to the airport 2 hours before. We would have done 3. And I said, "Well, it's an hour before right now. Like, I apologize. I didn't know we're standing in that line on the other end of the airport for 40 minutes. Can you please make an exception for us?" So she calls the agent that was on the other end of the airport and says, "These people said they've been waiting 40 minutes. Is that true?" And the agent said, "No, that is not true at all. I make a call at a minimum every 15 minutes. So again, it's not just my word. My husband and I were both waiting in that line all the time. So now she tells me, like, "No, that's a seasoned agent." And she calls out every 15 minutes. Like, "You are not telling the truth here." So I'm being called a liar by a manager at WestJet. So then I'm panicking, like, what do we do? They're not willing to help us at all. We tried doing the self-bag check-in. They had a little kiosk there and it said, "Must go see an agent." Not helpful. The line was one of those that went back and forth. So I went to a person way near the front and explained our situation and said, "Can I please cut in here?" And the person was like, "I'll let you go in front of me." Like, at the same time knowing like there's 80 other people that I'm going in front of, right? But he let me. So we got up to an agent in like 15 minutes and I went to check my bag knowing I'd just been told that hour rule. And the woman was nice, but she's like, "I don't know if I can check it. It's like 45 minutes before. It's supposed to be an hour." And I should tell you, the security line at the airport was nothing. Like, had they just checked our bag, we would have been through the security line in under 5 minutes. The WestJet line was the only line that was astronomical. I don't know if they planned their flights poorly, if they don't have enough self-check options. Each group with each agent was taking like 10 minutes to help. And they had like 6
Wow.
agents, but we're sitting there and we're watching the clock. Well, the same manager came over and said, I already talked to them. I told them they will need to call this customer service number. And I said, we explained to you at the time, we do not have international calling. We are not able to call anything. We still have 45 minutes before our flight even takes off. Like, I don't understand why you can't make an exception.
Right.
So the agent got on the phone to see what other flights there were that day. And going to Minneapolis from WestJet, there wasn't another flight for 2 more days. But they partner with Delta. And apparently, if we did it ourselves, if we went downstairs and we called the 1-800 number, we could get $150 per person flight change, and we could fly out later that day. So we're just like, I don't know what else to do since they won't help us.
Right.
So we left the line and we went to call the Delta number. And while we are on the phone with the Delta person, WestJet flight that we were supposed to be on got delayed. So again, it would have been less than an hour. They probably knew that it was being delayed. I don't know the reason, but would have been well within that hour. They just chose to not help us out. Very frustrated. Then when we get on the 1-800 number with Delta, we were told there's no such thing as this $150 change fee. I don't know what they're talking about. You're going to have to pay the full, like, we were just at the point where what else can we do? Right? And I think it was like $400 a person just for our flight home. We had to wait at the airport for, I think, about 4 hours before that next flight came. And we were all loaded on the Delta plane to go home. And they made an announcement. We're waiting for a customer. We're waiting for a couple people who were late in checking their bags. Our flight took off only like 5 or 10 minutes later because they were kind and let people check their bags last minute. I have got nothing but excellent customer service from Delta, but absolutely crap service from WestJet. And then here's the kicker of it all, and I don't understand their connection really with each other. When we got our credit card invoice for those 2 flights home, it was from WestJet. It did not say Delta on our credit card statement. It said WestJet. So I spent so much time like on customer service with them, trying to get a refund, trying to plead our case. I gave up. I just completely gave up. But I wanted to talk to you today because, like I said, that is some of the poorest customer experience I've ever had. We had such a fabulous time on our trip, and it really put a huge downer, like ending our trip that way.
Yeah, I can definitely understand. How should have that experience with WestJet Airlines gone for you? So if you could paint a new picture, what should have WestJet done so that you could have ended up a happy customer?
So by far and away, their communication should have said, please arrive at the airport 3 hours in advance. Our WestJet lines can sometimes be like hundreds of people, and we will not check bags unless you arrive at the checkout counter within 1 hour of your flight. Had we known, like I said, I've never heard of something like that in my life, and that been explained to us very clearly through email communications regarding flight check-in. Highly important, because I don't know if other airlines do it. Like I said, I mainly fly Delta and Sun Country. Never had issues with either one of them. We would have by far and away done that. We thought 2 hours is plenty of time. Calgary, like not a super big airport, but my husband and I will just read books. We'll get a snack in the airport. We're usually just there early. So never once did we think we were running last minute. The other thing that would have been incredibly helpful, if there was a large sign at the WestJet international flights are at the other end of the airport. I've never heard of 2 different check-in sites for one airport. I've never even heard of that. They shouldn't be leaving it up to agents and whether they're being truthful or not. Obviously, the agent should have been announcing it at least 15 minutes Because
Right.
had we arrived right after she announced it, even 15 minutes in that line is a huge inconvenience, right? I don't know why they don't just direct international travelers, the airport itself, but most importantly, right at WestJet. There should have been a large sign before you get into the line. So those two things were by far the most frustrating. And then, like, I don't think anybody in the line, because most people are good people. I don't think anyone in the line would have been like, hey, these two customers are going to miss their flight. We didn't need to get them checked in. Like, nobody would have been like rioting over that. Like, they could have just had that small kindness. Sun Country, who I fly a lot, they will have a special agent. Is anyone flying to Orlando at this time? Please come to this window. Like, they just did nothing to treat the customer right.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and really putting the customer first, making sure what's really helpful for customers and what they expect is to be able to get to where they need to go when they're expecting to be able to go, right? Arriving on time, the time they expect to arrive. As you said, doing those small bits of kindness to make sure passengers are getting to their flight. And I know myself personally, flying a lot for work, Delta is often, especially if it's the last flight out for the day, waiting, sometimes 15, sometimes even up to a half hour if they know passengers are late arriving from other flights, because they know it's really important for customers to get to where they're going. Also, to call you a liar, that's really inappropriate. So I'll leave you with this. JD Power found in their 2025 North American Airline Satisfaction Study that passenger experience directly influences brand loyalty. 81% of passengers who describe their experience as perfect will definitely fly the airline again versus just 4% who had a poor experience. Korrie, will you fly West Jet Airlines again?
No.
Power also found that the most important dimensions affecting overall satisfaction were the airline staff, which you clearly had a poor experience with, digital tools, ease of travel. Of course, your travel was a nightmare because you had to not only try to navigate without phone coverage to a different flight, but then you also had to pay full price. Level of trust. You can't trust that WestJet has your best intentions in mind. Your onboard experience, pre-post flight experience, and value for price paid. Experiencing problems negatively impacts trust and overall satisfaction, with flight delays being the most common issue across all segments. And WestJet specifically, their customer experience metrics have shown a mixed performance with a decline in satisfaction scores in 2025 compared to previous years, and is near the bottom of North American carriers, ranking 9th place out of 11 airlines in the economy category in 2025.
Not surprising.
Thank you, Korrie, for sharing your story about your airline experience, the moments that matter to you, the problems you encountered, and your summary of how the experience should have gone for you. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in to The Experience Gap, the Insight Shop to the rescue, helping businesses turn frustration into delight, one experience at a time. And lastly, I hope WestJet Airlines listens to this podcast so they can understand why they just lost a valuable customer.